It's not fair. That's a sentence most children learn to use early in their lives. They think the curfew isn't fair or their allowance wasn't big enough. Some people have had some difficult experiences, like where their house was broken into or maybe burned down. At times like that, we tend to say, "Why me? It's not fair." Catastrophes like that would happen more often if there wasn't some way to protect us. For example, we take fire hydrants for granted. Until we need them, that is.
Have you ever wondered how a fire hydrant actually works and what it looks like on the inside? Let's take a look for ourselves. Fire hydrants are basically red and black, but their bonnets, that's a piece on top, are painted different colors. These different colors indicate what size of water main or pipe they're connected to. White means it's a 4-inch tube, yellow is 6 inches, blue is 8 inches, and red is 10 inches or more. Obviously, a small tube gives out less water than a larger one, so it's important to know how much water the hydrant can put out. You wouldn't want to run out of water while fighting a fire. Even though fire hydrants may be different shapes and colors, they all have one thing in common. All of them have valves. Without valves, they'd be useless. A fire hydrant is much more than what you see above ground. In fact, most of the hydrant is below ground level. You have to go down 8 feet to find the valve system in a hydrant. The reason it's so deep is to get below the level to which the frost goes down in the winter. Frozen water doesn't spray very well. This is a simplified version of a screw-down valve. The water flows along the pipe under pressure. If the valve is screwed down tightly against this seat, no water can come through. If the top is turned so that the valve is moved away from the seat, an opening is formed and water can flow through. It works the same as a lot of bathroom sink taps. There are different kinds of screw-down valve fire hydrants. One that is often used is the gate valve. This is the hydrant here, the part you see above ground. It goes down 8 feet and attaches to the water pipe down below. The water presses against a leather gasket squished up tight against the valve seat. When there's a fire and the firemen need to use the hydrant, they turn the screw on top. This pulls the arm back and opens the valve down below. The water rushes up the hydrant and out the hole on the side. The firemen have attached a hose to this connection. The water runs through and comes out in a very fast stream, dousing the fire. International standards require that the hydrants must be able to give out at least 34 liters of water per second. That's this much if you're thinking the same thing as milk cartons. Remember, that's per second. By turning the screw on top, the valve opens and releases the pressure, allowing the water to be used to save lives and property.
We'll be back after this. Another word for fairness is justice. When someone treats us unfairly, or we think that something happened to us that shouldn't, we say that this is an injustice. People sometimes ask whether God is just or fair. Why did he let this bad experience happen to me? We usually can't see what God sees, his side of the picture. It may not always make sense to us, but he allows things to come into our lives that help us grow and become better people.
Every morning the sun rises over this piece of land, just as it has for years and years. Except for the birds flying overhead and a jackrabbit passing through occasionally, it's a setting of peace and stability. Sagebrush and rocks pin the fuzzy coat of prairie wool grass to the brown, fertile soil beneath. But one day, something changes. The farmer who owns this land has decided to break up the soil and turn it into productive wheatland. For all these years, this brown dirt has been hiding here under the grass, quiet and undisturbed. But now it can't hide anymore. Cruel? Maybe. But for a purpose. Next year, the farmer will seed it, and soon the field will change color, from brown to green as the grain begins to grow. Its roots will go deep into the rich soil. In time, there will be a beautiful harvest of grain. In a way, the soil is like people. People covering up, hiding from new opportunities, from things God wants to teach them. So he cuts and lays bare what's underneath. It may seem harsh, but it's the best way.
One of the hardest questions to answer is, why do bad things happen to good people? It seems so unfair or unjust. There are people who have stood up for what they believed was right, no matter what it cost them. One of these people was Dirk Willems, who lived hundreds of years ago.
In Bible times, if people wanted to describe something that was extremely valuable, they compared it to a pearl. Pearls had a very special place in the hearts of people. They were worth money, but people also found them to be very beautiful. People who had pearls handled them over and over, looking at them very carefully. They were considered to be the loveliest of all possessions. A merchant would go out and scour the markets of the world to find the most beautiful pearls. One day, when Jesus was describing the kingdom of heaven, he said, "It's like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he finds one of great value, he sells everything he has and buys it. It becomes that important to him." The kingdom of heaven is like that. A person must be willing to give up everything to follow Jesus. This isn't always easy, but it's worth it. And there is something beautiful and precious about such a life of self-denial and obedience. One person who felt very strongly this way was a man by the name of Dirk Willems. He lived in the 1500s at a time when it could be very costly to be a follower of Christ. Dirk loved the Bible. He followed it as closely as possible. The leaders in his community were very upset with him for this and had him thrown into prison. In those days, they imprisoned and sometimes even tortured Christians. One day, Dirk escaped from prison. It was the middle of winter. He ran across a thin covering of ice on a river with pursuers chasing him. He made it across the river to safety and could have been free except for one thing. One of the people chasing him broke through the ice and was in danger of drowning. Now, Dirk was a man of deep honesty. He practiced what he read in the Bible. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. His enemy desperately needed help, and Dirk made his decision. He left the safety he had found, went back to his pursuer, pulled him out of the water, and saved his life. Dirk himself was not so fortunate. His pursuer was anxious to let him go free, but the authorities felt otherwise. They seized Dirk again, and in spite of his kind deed, he was burned at the stake. In one way, Dirk's action didn't make sense, losing his life to save an enemy. But on the other hand, Dirk lived by the Bible. Doing God's will was more important to him than saving his own life. And besides, for him, dying meant going to heaven. That's the kind of thing Jesus meant when he said that the kingdom of heaven is like owning a valuable pearl.
We'll be back after this. It can be very rewarding to work with people who have problems, especially when they don't know how they got into them nor how to get out. Here's the story of a woman who is the program director of a shelter for women and children.
I was fortunate enough to be raised in a good home where my parents' values and a firm foundation of love was always shown to me. My parents always showed a lot of love. There wasn't a time where I couldn't come home and just go and get a hug from my parents or give one to my parents or my brothers and sisters for that matter if I just felt the need. We were very affectionate. We could always show emotion freely in the home, and I think that was very important. There were times that I felt that I was being judged wrongly or whatever because, like when I went into school and I had an older sister who her strong point was reading, and I had to follow behind that, and it was difficult because that wasn't my strong point, and I was being judged according to how my sister's abilities were as opposed to mine, and I had to go through a series of tests and things to show that I had no problem there, like it was just a different person. During different social activities that I was involved in with friends and things, I began to realize that there was a really need for people to be around and just listen for people who have big problems in their lives, just things that are going on really for them, that they just need people to listen, not necessarily give advice and things, but just to listen. And shortly after I started realizing this need, I was offered a job working in a crisis shelter, and where my job would be partly just being able to sit down and talk with people and seeing what their needs were and seeing what I could help them with just in their specific physical needs, as well as just being a friend at a lot of times. And as soon as I started working in this job, it was just revealed to me that the need was so great that I wanted to be there for these people, and I really enjoy the type of people that I deal with. The people that I talk with sometimes are coming from various backgrounds, and some of them are coming from they're being abused in their homes. Their husbands may be beating them while they're drunk, or maybe they're not even drunk at all. And that's not even the beginning of some of their problems. Their problems began at home, maybe a parent or an aunt or uncle, them seeing the alcoholism in the family. And when they've come to a place like a shelter where they need protection or a chance to think away from the problem, they get phone calls from family members that are telling them, well, why aren't you back home? You married this man, you have to stay home. Or just things like receiving a phone call from a lawyer telling them, well, they can't subpoena someone because they can't locate the man. Those are all very depressing things for a woman who's scared for her life sometimes. And sometimes even just the physical abuse that they've received, they're walking around on crutches because they've got a broken leg. And all those things are big factors in just how they can survive every day. It seems that everybody deals with what's happened to them or what's happening to them in a different way. Some people express bitterness, which shows or vented in the way they act towards everyone. They're angry, they're upset, they're mad, and they yell a lot, and they just refuse to deal with people telling them things to do or asking them things to do. There's other people actually who just get sad and withdraw. They just do as little communicating as possible. Some ways that I try to suggest that the women can deal with the feelings that they're having or the anger that's built up, say someone who's expressing anger, is showing them that there is a way to use that bitterness constructively, that they can use that energy, that they can try to make a difference for their life, make something better of themselves, that they can go off by themselves and get a place of their own, maybe go back and re-enter the workforce or take some courses to make them able to do that. And just encouraging them and not showing anger back at them when they're upset, just trying to show them that, I can identify with what they're feeling and suggest a better way. Another thing that I feel very fortunate about is that I've gone through some things in my life that I would consider emotional abuse. I've never had to go through the physical, but emotional abuse in a relationship. And I'm thankful that God's using all those things that I've gone through to help me understand and have compassion for the ladies that I deal with now. Because of what I've gone through, I can understand what they're saying and where they're coming from and the emotions that they feel and the insecurities. I've felt them, so I know what they're dealing with. And I'm just glad that all the things that I went through, it wasn't a loss. I had a really neat experience happen a couple days ago. I received a phone call, and the lady on the other end was crying, and she just wanted to talk to someone. So I took the call, and she was telling me that how she had a problem with alcohol, and she was drinking, and she had lost her children. They had been apprehended. And she was really upset about it. And she was telling me how her heart hurt, how she had just an emptiness inside of her, and she was just in pain because she missed her children so much, and she felt so guilty about drinking and everything. And she started telling me how she knew that God was knocking at the door of her heart, and how she wished she could do something about that, and just how much pain she was really in. And I asked her, after talking with her for a couple minutes, if I could pray with her. And she said, please. Like, she said, yes, please. So in my office, talking to her on the phone, I prayed with her for a couple minutes, just asking Jesus to be near to her and just to let her know that he was there to help her, and that if she trusted him, he'd do that for her. So I prayed with her for a couple minutes, and then she thanked me for praying with her and asked if I'd continue to pray for her, and I said sure, like I promised to do that for her. And so she said that, you know, she continued to tell me how she was hurting and felt sad. So then she hung up, and about 15 minutes later the phone rang again, and it was for me because I had given her my name. And she called back and said to me that she was all of a sudden, it was like a change. She was happy and excited, and before she was just so sad and in pain. You could hear it. And this time she was happy and excited, and she was just almost in tears of joy. She said that she just wanted to thank me for praying with her and reassuring her that there was someone she could turn to who could help her. And it was just an exciting experience to be able to have that happen to me, to know that I had actually maybe been able to help someone by sharing with them that Jesus Christ could help her. And it was just really exciting.
Even people like ministers, who should have a close relationship to God, sometimes wonder why God allows certain things to happen. There's a story in the Bible about a man who was asked by God to announce doom and judgment on a city where the people were doing a lot of very wrong things. They were cruel and unfair to people, and God decided that he couldn't stand it any longer.
Your sins smell awful. I will destroy you. This was the message from God that Jonah was to bring to the people of Nineveh. In Bible times, the city of Nineveh was known for its cruelty and power, and the king was an enemy of Jonah's people. But Jonah, who was a preacher, was afraid to go with the message, and he tried to run away from God. He found a ship that was going in the opposite direction, bought a ticket, and hid in the dark in the bottom of the ship's hold. But he should have known that he couldn't hide from God. God can be everywhere, even in the hold of a ship. Suddenly, as the ship was sailing along, he sent a terrible storm that threatened to send everyone to the bottom of the sea. The sailors prayed and threw cargo overboard to make the ship lighter. Finally, they found Jonah fast asleep. The angry captain asked him why he wasn't praying to his God like everybody else. It was determined that Jonah was running away from God and that he was the cause of all this trouble. So the captain had him thrown overboard. Now God wanted to give him another chance, so he arranged to have a great fish swallow Jonah. And he lived inside that fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Here he did what many people would do. He prayed, like he'd never prayed before. He asked God to forgive him for running away and to give him another chance. He promised to do anything God wanted him to do. Finally, God ordered the fish to spit him out on the beach. So Jonah obeyed and hurried to that great city Nineveh to warn the people of their doom. 40 days from now you will be destroyed, he cried. The king and his nobles heard what Jonah was saying. This is terrible, they said. So they sent out an order commanding people to stop eating and drinking for a while and spend time crying mightily to God. They were also ordered to quit their violence and robbing immediately. To show that he really meant it, the king took off his royal robe and dressed in rough cloth used for making sacks. Then he sat on a pile of ashes while he prayed to God. When God saw that the people of Nineveh had put a stop to their evil ways, he abandoned his plan to destroy them. But this made Jonah very angry. He didn't want God to change his plans. He wanted his predictions of judgment to come true, and he wanted the enemies of his people thoroughly destroyed. So he sat down and sulked. "If this is what you're going to do, let me die," he said to God. Then God said to him, "Jonah, you feel sorry for yourself, but why shouldn't I feel sorry for 120,000 people who need mercy? Don't you think I'd feel sad if all these people had to be killed?" Jonah hung his head. God was right. Those people deserved God's love too. They should be spared. Here was an opportunity for everyone, including Jonah, to learn a great lesson.
One good thing about that story is that the people recognized the wrong and unjust things they were doing, and they repented. That means they were very sorry for what they had done and changed their ways. God is very unhappy about injustices, but He's always willing to forgive and change people who come to Him. The good news is that we can come to Him at any time. God's Son Jesus died to take our place. He took the punishment we should have taken for the wrong things we've done. If we ask Him, He'll forgive us and allow us to have a new start. We'd like to hear from you at the Third Story. When you write, we'll send you a free survival kit, something to help you get to know God better. It includes a poster with Bible verses on it, a Bible study book with a book of the Bible, a book of cartoons and stories, and a helpful book of Bible verses for the whole family. Write for your free kit to The Third Story, Box 2, Station F, Winnipeg, Manitoba. That's The Third Story, Box 2, Station F, Winnipeg, Manitoba. We'll be waiting to hear from you.
Fading away, fading away. We work every day to keep up with the trends, neglecting the needs of our children and friends. We're wasting our time by living this way. The things of this world are fading away. Fading away. Fading away. Nothing remains, it all disappears. The life in our veins will go with the years. From the depths of the earth comes a haunting refrain. Just eat of the fruit and you will never die. Fading away. Fading away. Like leaves in the fall, like feathers in the wind, the days slip on by as soon as they begin. So call on our God while He may be known. The day is approaching when we'll reap what we've sown.